to another wonderful episode of the Arcane Archive. We are back for officially our second day in the row,
Hmm.
doing one of our favorite things, reading terrible stories that make me hurt
Ah,
inside. That's right, it's another Cautionary Chronicles.
Cautionary Chronicles. Luckily, I think today though is going to be a little bit less
No, it's not that
overall
bad.
like painful than it was certainly yesterday for
No,
sure.
a couple of these are definitely more of a, w- you know, maybe some
Lighthearted.
questioning,
Yeah.
maybe some opinions
Hmm.
on how these people handled themselves and if they could have done something differently for some of these. Um, so I look forward to that as opposed to just absolute horrible, cringy. Um, but yeah, welcome once again. Please don't forget, put down stuff in the comments. If you have comments on any of the stories we tell or any of the wonderful takes that we have afterwards, I'd be happy to read them, as would Adam. Um, but unless there's anything else you need from me, Adam, I can get right into our first story.
I mean, by all means, Sammy,
All right.
please take us away.
All right, I have our first story of the day, by Peter E. Venturer, The Coup. So this story is a major event in my DM career that traumatized me for a long time after and almost made me quit D&D entirely.
Oh
However,
boy.
I know. However, now that I'm in a better place in my life with a much better group of friends, I decided to post it here for your enjoyment.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate that, OP. It's very, very generous
Yeah,
of you.
it's good. The cast of characters isn't super important beyond the one evil genius I will call Bob. It all started
Bob.
in college in a creative writing class. I didn't have a ton of friends at the time, so I began to grow attached to this group of writers in that class. We would talk about writing fiction and just life in general for literal hours after the class had ended, and once even had to get kicked out of the classroom so the next class could start their lesson and use the room. That's nice. One day, someone floated the idea of wanting to play D&D, and I mentioned I was a longtime DM looking for a group for a horror campaign that I had been writing. So we immediately got together for a session, and it was instant magic. The characters created all had great concepts, the role playing was great, and everyone really enjoyed the story I had written. It was around this time I began to have a really good friendship with the infamous Bob. He had always had great insights into my writing, so I often asked him for advice regarding my campaign ideas. As this went on, I began to put a lot of trust in him, which he would soon come to abuse. No. On a particularly
Uh-oh.
busy day, when I was supposed to have a session, I realized I would have to cancel, but everyone was clamoring to have another session, so I called up Bob and suggested he try his hand at tonight at DMing. This was my first mistake. For as time went on and I resumed my DMing duties and the campaign continued to the 1 year mark, everything seemed to be going really well. When one day I was talking to some members of the group and found out Bob had run some sessions beyond the initial one shot without me. I was a little confused and asked Bob why he had excluded me. He told me that he thought I was going to be busy the entire week and that the plans were already made, so he didn't bother asking. I brushed this off, thinking that this was just a simple misunderstanding. Then the week of finals hit and everything went wrong. I was leaving my creative writing class to head over to my English final when Bob told me he needed to talk to me. Oh boy. He pulled me aside and told me, so I've talked with the group and we have unanimously decided to move on to a different campaign without you. Oh. And they asked
Jesus.
that I talk to you because they don't want to talk to you about it. I was floored. This had been my only friend group most of college, and they were abandoning me. I mumbled some apology, went to my final, and I was so upset about everything I fully failed that final. When I got home, I
Jesus.
couldn't get any of it through my skull. I must have done something to offend them, said something or done something, but for the life of me, I couldn't figure out what I could have done. I felt so unbearably guilty, but I didn't even know what I had done to deserve any of it. So I decided I need to talk to the group, apologize, and then leave them like they wanted. On the group chat, I apologized profusely and told them that I respected their decision and wished everyone the best. Then the first message came. What are you talking about? We never said anything about kicking you from the group.
I was gonna say, I like this. This all seems a little like little sketchy here, my friends.
The rest of the group entered the chat all saying the same confused sentiment. No one knew they had unanimously decided to kick me from the group and start a new campaign. Everyone except Bob. Absolutely furious, I tried to confront him online, but he denied any involvement, saying he must have been confused or that maybe the other players were intimidated by me. I then went and talked to each one of my players, and everyone had the same story. Bob had been having sessions without me, and he had never mentioned any of this to anyone. At this point, the semester was over, and the group never really got over this. We were all weirded out by this incident, and people generally stopped talking to each other. The passion to play my campaign went out as well, as none of us could really get past what had happened. A while later, I ran to one of my old friends, and she confirmed that Bob's campaign he had wanted to run never manifested, as everyone pretty much blamed him for everything and thought he was a jerk for doing what he did. So that was some solace, at least. It took me a long while to get over this incident and start trusting people again, but after a bunch of therapy sessions and tentatively running a few one-shots, I started playing D&D again, and I'm proud to DM to this day. I have an awesome group who supports me and is very open about issues they have, and it has done wonders to build back my self-confidence as a DM and as a person. Jesus Christ. So I guess the lesson in this is if the world seems like it's turned against you, maybe double check to make sure it isn't one guy trying to do something sneaky.
Yeah, no shiznit. Like I like no offense, OP, but like why did the I don't understand. Why did the entire group just suddenly crumble and collapse because of one jerk ass lying and trying to like manipulate
Yeah, I don't
everybody?
understand why the rest of them couldn't still be friends, but
Like I don't
okay.
like I don't understand. I'm confused here. Like this seems
The sun is directly behind me. I have a tiny little window, and it has to be pointing right here. If I can see anything.
Well,
But
I mean, if
yeah,
anything, it makes you look quite divine, though. You know, you
I
have
know.
this like you have this glow in the back where you're like, yeah, where
Yeah, it's kind of
you
ridiculous.
are the chosen. You
Reason
got
one.
divine intervention coming in.
Yeah,
Um,
this one I liked because it was one of those things where I'm like, what?
yeah, I I'm more so just confused. I don't know why the entire group had to implode because of this.
Well,
Like,
they're college kids. I don't know if you
yeah,
ever met a college kid, but
unfortunately, but I mean, but still, it's just I don't know, man. Yeah, it just seems like such like an unfortunate, sad, ridiculous thing to happen. Like for it to result in that alone. Like, yeah, I guess it's some solace that people didn't actually believe Bob and didn't actually go with Bob's whole thing. But again, the fact that like, why didn't you just kick Bob out and keep playing? If you guys enjoyed it that much, I just yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand. It's
like I feel bad for Peter here.
yeah.
They obviously got through it on top with a better group of friends and a better D&D game, all the same.
Yeah,
But
that's something. That is definitely something.
the
Like,
fuck?
I mean, hey, I guess maybe I guess it was just a meant to be thing. Maybe people weren't as invested anyway, and so they kind of just use this as a means of being like, yeah, I'm kind of just gonna, distance myself or whatever from this, or just this is an out that I'm gonna take. Maybe I don't know. Again, I don't understand why people can't just have straight up conversations. I get it; it's a little uncomfortable, yeah, but. I'm always an advocate for just be honest and straightforward with most things. And it's usually the best policy. But, uh in the comments, like,
Very supportive for the most part.
yeah, it seems like most people are very quite supportive, which is nice. I mean, I'll definitely say it is supremely effed up that OP failed their final because of this. Like that, oh my
So he
God, like
said too, he ended up failing the class because of it.
yeah. Like, well, usually because your final usually accounts for like an astronomical amount of your grade in a class a lot of the time. So it's like, yeah, you failed the final. Like that's a huge hit. It's like the fact that Bob just tried to like I mean the fact that he literally just walked up and he was like, hey, so I talked with the group and we've all decided that we're gonna move on to a campaign without you, and they asked that I talk to you because they don't want to talk to you about it. And it's like yeah, right away that just stinks. That all just stinks to high heaven. Like you're like, what? Wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. Nobody said anything like that's like if they really wanted me gone, then that's fine. If they're, whatever, but like I'm gonna have to get a little bit more I'm gonna have to get a little bit more info than that, my friend. Um yeah, unfortunately Peter had to retake the class.
Which, uh, but hey,
Yeah, I mean at least, he already had the vast majority of knowledge and info that he probably needed in order to pass the class, so it wouldn't have been nearly as horrible the second time
well, it's
around.
almost like final exam shouldn't be that much of your grade, but oh,
You'd certainly hope so, right? You'd
you
certainly be like,
think.
maybe you should try and, base it off of your continued progress, towards the end. Maybe, quite frankly, I don't know why they could have just let him retake the exam, maybe. Like, just, whatever. Whatever. Because they want more money, I guess. Anywho, that was the coup, everybody. Anything else you kind of got on this one, Sammy?
No, I just thought it was a not so terrible story.
I mean,
Like
it's
it
definitely,
sucks,
yeah, it's definitely
but
shitty, but it's kind of weird, but definitely not the worst we've ever heard. This Bob guy was definitely made of something else. Like he desperately, so desperately wanted to just hijack this group to play his own game. I just don't really understand like why why he tried to like cut OP out of all things. Like I don't know if it's because he thought like with OP as the current GM that like he wouldn't be able to. I don't know why he couldn't just propose like, hey, can I like maybe I could run a campaign? Like we could maybe like, we could switch off running like my campaign, your campaign, or like something. I don't know why he saw fit to try and like exile OP of all things, but who knows? Who could possibly know the mind of an idiot, really? We probably don't want to. But that being the case, let's go ahead and move on to the next one for the day. We're on to another very unique, interesting story. This one is titled "Lunatic D&D Player Puts Crystal M in My Coffee" by Striker Fi. Um, Oh boy, this is a wild memory to this day. I would certainly assume so. I still refuse to drink coffee because of this incident. So I play with a group of friends who go to the same college as me. Another college tale. We got a theme going already. And I have been playing with them for at least 2 years now, albeit with some players coming and going here and there. We recently started up a new game though, and our party's rogue decided to take up DMing for a change. He was a pretty good GM, to be fair. He didn't prepare, but man, was he a master at improv. Honestly, improv GMs can honestly be some of the most fun GMs to play with. It's true. Um, we, the party, built all of our characters, and we generally tended to gravitate towards the typical archetypes we usually play as. We had our hippie healer, our horny bards, or horny warlock occasionally, our borderline murder hobo, and me, of course, the lawful good voice of reason paladin. While I appreciate edgy characters, I personally just usually like playing the opposite, and the party loves to bust my balls about it. They'd tell me to take the stick out of my ass and lighten up a bit and all that good stuff. And it was all in good fun. Or so I thought. One day, we were playing at Borderline Murder Hobo's house, and we had just finished a major battle with a powerful goblin samurai. And so after, we headed back to the city. It may not sound like it, but this was an absolutely massive accomplishment for us. That Goblin Samurai has been our nemesis for the last 5 or so sessions now, and finally defeating him was absolutely euphoric. Borderline Murder Hobo mentioned how he was going to find this priest and ice him for converting his girlfriend and making her swear an oath to a life of religious celibacy. Ooh, yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard hit to take. The rest of the party was on board. The sentiment was kind of basically, F it. We all deserve one random act of murder plus loot. Plus, the tipple was super loaded. My character, however, was kind of obviously opposed to this idea and threatened to tell the authorities. Borderline groaned and said, no worries, with an evil grin. I smirk, thinking he is planning something in game that I was going to have to thwart. He then abruptly said, let's have a break. I want some coffee. Y'all want some coffee? Yeah, we all agreed. Why not? I like coffee. He gave us our coffee as we talked a bit, and then we got back to our game while I sipped my coffee. As we went to the city, I started feeling real jittery and wild, and the feeling just kept escalating. It was honestly unlike any other feeling I could possibly imagine or describe, and I felt impulsive. So when the party inevitably did kill the priest, I also decided to join in on the fun. And then, after it was done, I started cheering super loud. And then I just remembered saying, F it! I'm killing every mother effer in here! The DM just laughed and said, you know you're gonna become an oath breaker after this, right? And I just said, F my oaths! It's time to turn this temple red! And we started to slaughter every single person in the temple, including the children. Wow, bro. That got dark real freaking quick. And afterwards, we were greeted by city watchmen and city Templars, paladins, who tried to stop us as we escaped. As we were on the road discussing means to change our identities as wanted men and women, I was in real life feeling worse and worse as my heart was pounding like never before. And I was paranoid both about getting attacked in D&D and paranoid about dying IRL from some heart attack. I started theorizing that maybe my coffee was too strong and even asked Borderline, who was not so borderline at this point, how much coffee he put in. And he said, just the right amount, compadre. As he could barely hold off laughter, which started to freak me out. I kept pressing him until he finally admitted that he added a little something extra to the concoction. Chemical X, if you will. I asked him if it was weed, and he just laughed his ass off. DM then asked him, okay, dude, seriously, what the hell did you do to our coffee? This isn't funny. And he just kept laughing and said, just Paladin's coffee. He's tweaking. And we all let out a collective, what? As he just kept laughing. I then start freaking out, fairly so, I would say, more as the GM and party try to calm me down as I'm now flailing in my seat and outright crying. I think the crying finally got Borderline to recognize the severity of the situation, because he did end up stop laughing after that and tried to tell me it's okay and they only put a little bit in there. Horny Bard's player asks, how much is a little bit, huh? And he said, just like 50 mg tops. DM then said, 50? You effing asshole. Go, get out. Just go somewhere. He then responds, but this is my house. But GM just stared him down until he left. The next few hours were an absolute nightmare of paranoia and shame. But everyone stayed there with me until my friend finally got me to go to sleep, LOL. After I drank like a boatload of calming tea and got me some calming music, still didn't get to sleep for a while, but eventually I was able to finally rest and relax. The next morning, GM was still there, and he offered to take me to get some food. I guess Borderline Murder Hobo stayed at a hotel, but he came back the next morning profusely apologetic before I left. I didn't want to speak to him after that, and I haven't since the D&D game was put on pause. At this point, though, I do have to put some distance between me and the incident, and while I'm definitely not at, hey, look back and laugh at this just yet, I do wonder if I am willing to forgive him, given the fact that he does seem sincerely apologetic, and I kind of just want my life back to normal. But I don't know. I need at least another month before even considering it, and GM, to his credit, put the game on delay for more or less around that same time. End post. All right, so right off the bat, Sammy, what do you think of this?
You should not go play with this person ever again. The DM and like the rest of people, I think, is fine because they made him leave. They tried to keep you okay. You should not interact with that person.
Nah, this whole thing is pretty fucking wild. I'm not gonna lie. Like when I saw this, I was like, what? Wait a minute. Hang on a second. Literally spiking your fellow DD player's drink with Crystal. That's a new one for me.
I'm just trying to think of all the drugs I'd rather do.
Like literally
Um,
of all like again of all the things for him to do, like obviously I guess it technically was quite appropriate for what he was the reaction he was trying to get in terms of kind of like making OP probably like kind of crazy and willing to do crazier, stupid, dumb shit, I guess, maybe. But like, Jesus, dude, I will never understand a person's like reasoning when it comes to trying to forcefully give other people like narcotics of any kind. Like that, I don't really care what your reasoning, logic, motivations, or intentions were. Like there is almost never, ever a good reason to force somebody else to partake in any kind of like narcotic or drug or anything like that. Like there's like no. There's almost never. Like unless someone's maybe, on the verge of death or something and you have to like give them something to maybe help save them maybe or whatever. Sure. Yeah, sure. But shit like this where you're like unknowingly giving them some shit like oh boy, that is a specific kind of ick. That is just not coolio with
no,
me, compadre.
you
Mm-mm.
shouldn't give people drugs that, that's not.
That they didn't ask for. Hell, sometimes you probably even shouldn't give people drugs that they did ask for. Quite frankly, like this. I mean, hey, I guess to be fair, I will give Borderline at least some credit that apparently they do seem legitimately apologetic. And quite
But
frankly,
but in what fucking world is that? Like, there's no.
well, here is maybe one particular thing. And again, it doesn't make his actions okay. But if he is currently kind of already high on his own supply, he's not necessarily probably thinking as clearly and reasonably as he
Well,
should
no
be.
one carries around meth without doing meth.
Exactly. Point being is like, and that being the case, I'm like, okay, I could at least understand why he probably was not realizing and thinking this through clearly. Though you also have to also wonder, like, I don't know if I want to play with somebody who partakes in crystal personally. I'm not.
Well, just because someone does crystal meth doesn't mean they can't be a good person.
No,
There are
but
many walks of life. It's not that. It's just don't give it to me,
well,
and
I mean, I don't
don't
know.
steal things out of my kitchen to sell for crystal meth.
The thing that Crystal does though, that's what I'm saying. Like the thing that
Yeah.
Crystal does, like normally it would take like a very potent like it would take some kind of guy, some kind of person to be able to handle Crystal while still being like a cool, decent person after a while. Like, Crystal is kind of like designed
Yeah, it's
to
designed to ruin you,
to
so.
ruin your shit. Like it's like that. That's not like some. That's not like weed. Okay, it's not like just smoke sparking up a doobie and just like you're just chilling. All right, Crystal is a whole other ball game. That it's just like okay, that that might be. Heck, it's not even like Coke, right? It's not even like Coke, where it's like even Coke is like not even. Crystal is something way important. To be fair, though, to be fair, even though technically OP titled it that, there he doesn't actually say anywhere in here what his drink was actually spiked with. Like the borderline literally just says that he's tweaking, that he just put a little something in there, he's tweaking. So technically speaking, I guess we don't actually know if it's really crystal, but because again, it seems kind of like strange that, like to Sam's point, if this dude really has access to that and is actively getting that, I think that this guy would have been way more
So
like kind of
so the
crazy or
other
like
the other thing is there is a difference between meth, like, because there's just methamphetamines, So
True.
like those are prescription methamphetamines. Those exist. So this could also
It,
be just someone who has access to pills.
I was gonna say like Adderall, I
Because
guess. Like,
no, Adderall. Well, no, I don't think Adderall's not a methamphetamine. I don't think.
I thought it was
I
like
think I
to.
think methamphetamines are one step up.
Yeah, no, but I do know Adderall does technically contain like amounts of meth. I'm pretty sure. Adderall.
Adderall has amphetamines, not methamphetamines.
Okay.
Which I believe is just a difference in strength.
Yeah, that's what I was
But
gonna
there
say. I
are
think it's
prescription
just like
drugs. Like there is a drug stronger than Adderall that you can
yes,
take for ADHD.
yes.
Um, and getting that kind of stuff
But
together and
see,
cooking it makes it into crystal meth. So
but see, that's
if
the thing.
he's
If he had access to those, though, but point being that wouldn't have made OP necessarily react like that, though. Like
no, they
OP
could
is
if you don't need stuff like that, and you get dosed with something you've never had before, and you're taking it with caffeine, there is no
that's true.
telling.
The caffeine is
There's
oftentimes highly like that's
the
another. I mean, that's well, but again, if this dude had that stuff too, you would think you'd also be aware that you don't want to mix like coffee and freaking
well,
amphetamines.
look, I'm
Like
gonna say this. When you do that stuff, people mix that stuff all the time because it changes how it feels. Especially if you do it more than once and you're used to it. If you've never done
yeah,
something like that before, I mean, like I don't know how it was in your high school. In mine, there were people doing pills and stuff like that. That's just kind of part of the game. You figure out what works and what doesn't for you, whatever.
sure.
If you've never done that stuff and you get coffee, so you're mixing two uppers together and you're doing something and you're animated, you can give yourself heart palpitations, which is that tight chest feeling where you
Yep.
sweat and you panic and you
Yeah.
get paranoid and you can't sleep. I've had those before from other things, not from non-prescription drugs, but from my
Yeah.
actual prescription drugs, because there are things that can do that to you if you're not careful.
Oh yeah. No,
It's
drugs
a
are just,
terrifying feeling, and
drugs are
I
drugs.
I entirely understand. Most likely it was that. Most likely it wasn't like an overdose or you got super fucking high on meth. Most likely you had ostensibly a drug-fueled panic attack, which is you can't get out of. It's really hard to stop once it starts. It's terrifying. It's not something I wish on anyone except the people I hate the most, because it's not fun to deal with, and I've had to before, and it's like terrifying. Like actually, like you won't feel good for like days afterwards. Um, so this is something that like you should never interact with this person again, because that's not only is that dangerous,
Well, I mean,
they're not your friend. No
it's
friend is going to do that to you. That's actually a friend. A real friend, I don't care what drugs they're on, I don't care what they do in their day to day, they can keep that to themselves. If they decide to include you in that non-consensually, they are no longer your friend. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. There isn't. I'm not like if this was an accident, that'd be a different story. Things happen, shit happens, and they apologized. And if you can find in your heart to forgive them, fine. But this doesn't sound like an accident.
well,
This was
absolutely not. This was
intentional. You
100%
were
intentional.
targeted.
Yeah,
If
100%.
if you had a friend who maybe put it in their own coffee and then they put the two coffees together on the table and you grab the wrong one, that is entirely different than someone purposefully dosing your beverage. This is not the same thing.
Yeah.
Because it happens. That kind of stuff happens. Mix-ups happen. That's not what this sounds like. And they
No, no,
even
no, no.
admitted that it wasn't the
No,
case.
no, 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 no.
So no, never play with this person again. And if the rest of that group wants to continue to play with them, I would either ask them to kick the other person out or you leave yourself. Unfortunately. Like,
Yeah, I mean this whole thing. If this is a real story, like this whole thing 100% just like bad news bears. Just nope. Mm-mm. Like I'm sorry. Like again, I don't know. Like because again, like me and Sam both just said, and as I'll reiterate now, I cannot see any reasonable, rational, fair, or harmless reason somebody would unconsensually spike somebody's drink with something. Like that's I yeah. No, it doesn't. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. There is never a benevolent reason in my mind that you can really do that. Like, No. Stuff like this, you do not get unless somebody's like life is in danger and it's something that can actually help them in some way or something like that. Yeah, sure, whatever. Like Sam said, there's life it happens. There are obviously always exceptions to every rule, of course, but this ain't one of them from where I'm sitting. This ain't one of them. Like I don't really know what you want me to say, bro. Like I don't know how I could ever really trust this person again in any way, shape, or form. Um, Again, it's sweet, I guess maybe. Again, this thing I'm on the fence whether or not it's really a good thing for OP to even be considering. Like maybe I'll forgive them because they did seem really apologetic. And it's like, I get it. Borderline made the assumption that, oh, it wouldn't be that bad. It's just a little bit. Like it'll just make them, it'll just get them really like energized and, excited or whatever. And it's like, I don't like people like that who are just again like because they engage in this kind of thing and maybe their tolerance is high or they're used to it, but then they automatically make that decision for other people too. It's like, bro, I don't care, man. Like, don't do that. Like, that is just such a bad look, bro. Like, I don't know, because it definitely says something about the dude too. Because I'm sure the irony of it is, I'm sure that if someone did it to him, he probably wouldn't care, right? He probably wouldn't care because he'd be like, "Yeah, I do this stuff all the time. Like, what does it matter? Like, he's just it's just a prank, bro. It's just a prank, bro." And you're just like, but don't you think maybe that's a problem that you don't care about that? That's not a like that's a problem. That's a problem. Um, Vast majority of the comments down here are just basically saying this is a fake story. Weird enough. They don't like, which again, I do understand. Like there are very fantastical kind of elements to this, but the irony, the weirdness of it is personally, I don't think it's a particularly far-fetched scenario, quite frankly. Like
Yeah.
I could 100% believe that this happened. Like I don't, yeah, it's pretty crazy, but it's ironically not the type of crazy that's like unbelievable or unrealistic, ironically. It is a very realistic crazy, actually. Um, yeah, like one of the comments says like, I don't know, the story itself is reasonable enough to believe and is for sure something a person could make a burner account for posting. Although anyone involved is going to know who it is from the details. The part that gives me pause that OP is nowhere in the comments. That's true too. That is a fair that is also a fair critique here. It could be a fake story, because it doesn't seem like OP has commented on anything either. Um, but either way, even if this is some like super elaborate like Chat GPT crafted story, or maybe it's one of the AI bot things like that dude was saying, I'll the irony of it is yeah, this story is not that it is not so crazy as to be completely detached from reality, which is the craziest thing to think about, right? That is the craziest thing is the fact that this story is believable to a reasonable extent. That's fucking God. What have we come to as a species, bro? Just let's move on. We're gonna go to the next story of the day. Go ahead and take it away, Sam.
Yeah, I have a new evidence. And our next story by Mad199. Am I the asshole? A horde of Fae attack the PCs. This is a long-running Mage the Ascension game, and a situation I am very confused about. I've been playing RPGs for 30 years and never came across something like this. We have 5 PCs for the session, and I'm playing the only Akashic PC, the only combat-oriented PC. Although using magic, all the PCs have ways of contributing in a fight. The PCs are primarily investigators and are currently investigating numerous cases of apparent quote unquote wish granting. There is a superhero flying around, people winning the lottery more than normal, marriages are way up, and we don't know if supervillains or
Uh-oh.
other evil things are also being created, or if all those marriages are willing. Our investigation takes us to a warehouse. which we have found out is supplying oil to at least one local restaurant. This oil is enchanted, causing behavior-altering effects on the people who eat the food. We know Fae of some kind are likely involved at this point, but have no idea how evil these Fae are, or if negotiations will even be possible. We disguise ourselves as FDA inspectors to enter the warehouse, and we find a portal to some kind of Fae realm inside and enter it, hoping to find some answers. We find a satyr on a farm, or satyr, sorry. We walk up and say
Say to your
hello.
satyr, whatever.
The satyr says, "Oh, bugger," and runs away. One of the PCs teleports ahead of the
Oh,
satyr to try to intercept him.
bugger.
My PC runs after him and says, "We only want to talk."
Oh my
And when the
goodness.
satyr keeps running, she tackles him and continues to explain that we only want to ask some questions. You did tackle them, though. The
They were
satyr
running
shouts,
away, so you know.
Yeah, you're not the police. I'm just kidding. The satyr shouts for help, and a mixed group of 30
No, they
trolls,
just.
elves,
Oh, I'm
ogres, and
not gonna
other
finish
fake
that. I'm not gonna
creatures
finish that.
runs into. I know they don't need permission.
Oh,
Runs into runs into
that's what
sight
that
nearby.
wasn't what I was gonna say,
I
but
know. Mine was a bit more PC of saying the same thing,
yeah,
I guess.
mine was very rated. Mine was very
Just never
explicit.
stopped them from being aggressive pieces of shit before. They look very. There's a mixed group of 30 trolls, elves, ogres, and other fake creatures runs into sight nearby. They look very aggressive. At this point, reactions among the PCs vary. We had no time to discuss any kind of plan for this. One PC surrenders. One of them prepares to cast a spell to create cold iron and cover a possible retreat. One
Old
of them
iron. That's
hides.
brilliant. Not many people know about that little tidbit of Faye.
I don't know anything about it. Oh wait, cold iron is like it's like the old anti-Fae, like it's part of like old lore.
That's what I'm saying. That's a little bit of a that's a reach back in the like cold iron is the aspect that essentially is kind of like almost the antithesis of like, nature or whatever. Cold iron is like, the essence of almost like civilization, and so therefore it is often considered to be like the kryptonite to like fae or natural spirits, nature spirits and fae and things like that. Like
That's
that
like in
is
the that's like in the real world.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
the
That
okay.
that was often depicted a reference like, an old Celtic kind of lore and stuff like that was cold
Okay.
iron.
That's why
So
I knew it. That's why I was like,
yeah.
I
Well,
know what
they
this
they
is.
also technically they did feature it in D&D too in the old days. Like it was much more prevalent in terms of Fae and stuff back in the day, but I don't know, they dropped basically kind of the aspect of cold iron a long time ago for some reason. Like it's not nearly as prevalent as it used to be.
Uh,
Um in
you can
like
bring it back.
Fae lore. Yeah. I mean again, it's still always a cool element and thing to utilize because yeah.
All right. So one of them casts a spell to create cold iron and cover a possible retreat. One of them hides, and one of the PCs casts a spell, forcing anyone within a large circle to not attack, essentially mind controlling my PC and most of the horde to prevent aggression. My PC doesn't know how evil these Fae are. She sees that there's seems to be no coherent plan, but one of the PCs is surrendering, which might lead to a very bad fate for them. She is protective of the party, so she draws her sword from hammer space, and I ask the GM if I can identify a leader. I am told no. So I point at someone in the front of the crowd and tell them I wish to speak to their leader. I succeed on a social roll to do this, but they ignore me, draw their own weapons, and tell me to drop my weapon. The Fae continue to approach threateningly while my PC asks them to back off. She only wants to speak to their leader. This doesn't work. My PC tries to retreat from the non-aggression circle as she is unable to attack, but some of the Fae creatures can attack her. Combat seems inevitable, but the GM now makes it clear that he doesn't want combat. I am confused and do not know what to do. I have been, in my opinion, painted into a corner despite trying multiple times for peaceful outcome. The GM is simultaneously forcing combat on me and saying that he doesn't want combat. He tells me that my choice to fight is invalidating the other PC's choices to surrender, and that I need to respect the other PC's decision. I don't see an in-character way of choosing differently. I offer several options for solving the situation, including one, my PC makes a choice to surrender anyway, despite making no sense in character. Two, we retcon the situation, prevent things from escalating at an earlier point in time. Three, my PC creates some cold iron to defend herself, and as a result is inadvertently kicked out of the Fey realm and thus removed from the situation. And four, some third party member is somehow able to inform my PC that the party would be safe if they surrendered, so that she could surrender in character. The GM chooses five and kicks me from the game, telling me our playstyles are incompatible. Am I the asshole? No. No. Um, I
Yeah,
don't I don't think so, but I'm a so like we've talked many times. This is a moment where you have to back out of the game completely. Like in the session is the one where you're like, wait. I need
yeah,
a moment. Let's talk this out.
yeah. This is
Because
you put the thing on pause real quick because like
this doesn't even make any sense.
no, I was gonna say like right away. I don't know if you could maybe tell acolytes like the moment where I started to be like, wait, hang on a second,
Yeah,
like, and
you
I'm
went to
like,
like get read
and
closer at it.
I like moved it. I'm like reading stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, did I miss something? I feel like I missed something because this all seems exceedingly strange and out of nowhere and weird. Like where it's just like literally like OP herself like points out is there seems to be a little bit of a hypocrisy or contradiction in the GM's words and actions where he's saying he doesn't want violence and conflict, but when she's technically trying to find a way not to escalate the violence and conflict in character anyway, he seems to only be willing to escalate the violence and conflict instead of offering any other way, except, of course, unless it's just the complete and utter surrender of everybody. Like that seems a little bit, limited to say the least. I don't know. What do you think, Sam?
Like there is a way to get out of it. Like maybe a slight retcon, or maybe you could have apologized in character and like put your sword down and been like, look, I don't want to fight you. I don't want to die. So what do we do here? And like, you can appeal to NPCs. If if the DM doesn't want combat, you could attempt to appeal to that. But the reality is like you didn't deserve to get kicked out for any
Yeah,
reason, really. Like I unless you were being an asshole at the table.
well, I like again, I would like maybe a little bit more preamble, maybe because like it's like we don't have any other context, right? It's like, okay, is this like a third strike or something we're talking about here,
Yeah.
where you've always kind of been like kind of like because the GM apparently by OP's telling says like you're invalidating the other PCs that you aren't respecting and invalidating the other PC's choices and decisions and everything. So it's like, do you do that often, or is this like because yeah, otherwise the GM's reaction just seems like just incredibly out of place and weird, out of nowhere. Like it also could be a thing where yeah, the GM himself maybe OP is the type who's very analytical and is often maybe going counter to what the GM is always planning and intending to do. Maybe the GM is a very railroady kind of GM, and so like she's always kind of maybe throwing a wrench in that plan. And he just kind of wanted an excuse to finally get rid of her, maybe. Like,
Definitely possible, if not probable, considering
but to be
like
fair
the
though,
way that they're talking. Because like
yeah,
you could equally say that everybody else's choice invalidates theirs.
yeah, or technically speaking, like like again, you don't like her choice doesn't have to have any impact on the rest of the party because it's her choice. And the Fae don't have to attack the rest of the party just because she's the only one not surrendering. Like that's all again, and to be fair, that is a thing that a lot of GMs will do, where they'll be like, "Oh, one party member is going against the rest, like the rest of the like if the rest of the party wants to be, like they want to do diplomacy and and talk, and not necessarily engage in combat. But one party member's like, "Fuck that!" Oh! And like starts combat, and then it's like, "Oh, now the entire party is engaged." It's like we're not fighting, we're not attacking. What do you mean? Why are we involved in this? Like we didn't do anything. And it's like, so I mean, I based off of how OP has presented things, it doesn't seem to me like she's the asshole in this. Like, again, maybe she's deliberately omitting things or no context, maybe, I don't know. But from this, I'm highly inclined to believe OP is the victim here in terms of just this GM just kind of being an absolute douche canoe for seemingly no real reason. Like, because again, it, nothing that she did here, in my opinion, seems illogical, irrational, or unreasonable. Like,
Just
because, technically speaking, some of the other PCs also deliberately did things that keeps them from attacking or was preparing for an escape. Like one of the other PCs apparently already had a spell ready to cast Cold Iron to make an escape. At least that's what OP says. Another one went and hid somewhere. Another one, cast a spell to keep people from being aggressive. So what happened to that? I don't really know what happened to that, to be honest. Like, because one of the PCs, she literally says one of the PCs cast a spell that affected her PC as well, so
yeah,
that they can't be aggressive. I don't know. There's a lot about this. It's kind of just weird to me. Um,
yeah. I don't. What I'm confused by is it seems like a very big double standard.
one of the comments down here goes like, I mean, I don't know what's going on here, but I would point out that tackling someone while saying we just want to talk is kind of a hostile action. And OP responds, yes, it is. Again, we didn't know how evil these Fae were, and we had to get answers. It was a difficult situation. I would have been glad to retcon it, but that action made sense at the time. Then the dude replies back again, says, you chose to tackle the Fae when they ran, and then you chose to draw a sword on the rescuers when they called for help. That would count as choosing confrontation to me if I was running a game, which is, I wouldn't kick someone for that, though, unless they had a history of choosing confrontation in a way that was consistently annoying the rest of the group. I just play it out. Do you have a history of choosing confrontation? OP responds and says, no, we've only had 3 combats in the nearly 1 year the game has been running. And I didn't start any of those fights. The group was either attacked or it was a group decision to fight. That's also crazy to me. 3 combats in nearly a full year.
I
That's
don't know enough about Mage of the Ascension.
I don't know. I don't know. Either way, like, yeah, I don't know. From this comment here, I don't really agree with this commenter. Like again, saying like you chose to tackle the Fae when they ran. Like, well, yeah. Again, I don't necessarily know if you technically had to tackle him. Like if it was just considered like I'm gonna grapple him. I want to keep him from running away. It's like, yeah, or if you have magic to stop him, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how either. Like either way, it's like, yeah, you want to probably stop the satyr who just said bugger me and then ran away. Like, why wouldn't you want to stop that? Like, and then, yeah, he calls a group of dudes to come. OP, again, reasonable, says we don't know how evil or bad these Fae are. So yeah, you draw your sword to have it ready to defend yourself. She didn't attack them. She didn't draw her sword and immediately attack. She just said, I want to talk to your leader. And then the GM says that they ignore you, where he says no, which is like, even though apparently she could roll a check and she succeeded. Yeah, I can't help but feel like this is all pretty much just the GM being a dickhead. Anything else you got on this one, bud?
Nope.
All right, let's move on to the next one then. This one is actually I would view this less of a horror story and more as a glory story, quite frankly, because this one is fucking great. I enjoyed the hell out of this one. This story is called Manipulation Check Fail by Red Fox Music. Shout out to Red Fox Music. This is gonna be fun. I'd been a fairly long time player with this purely online D&D group. There was one player who I'll refer to as Steve. Steve plays decently, but most of his character ideas were typically from other media. Ugh, we hate that. He claimed they weren't, but
What do you mean
seven family
that's
names.
not what you want from all the characters at your table to just be ripoffs from other things?
That is again, there are very few. We've talked about this before. I'm pretty sure there are very few things that I will be like the type that'll be like, no, you can't do that, or you can't bring that, or you can't, or that's whatever. Like I am so open and ready for just about any and every character concept and idea that isn't, either one, deliberately trying to be an asshole or conflicting or shitty with the party and the whole campaign as a whole, where you're just, not even trying to fit yourself in here at all, like that. No. Uh, And the other one being the only things that I usually will not love is, yeah, essentially totally ripping off a pre-established and known character in your game, or even better yet, just playing that literal character in a game. That shit, oh my God, that shit drives me up a fucking wall sometimes, where you literally have people who will just be like, yeah, I think we read a story one time literally about a group that was doing that shit, where they just brought in like characters from other media already to just play as them. They weren't even like inspiration type characters where they're like not exactly the same, but just took inspirations and stuff, because that's fine. You know what? If they're not like literal shot for shot carbon copies of this character here, like if you took just some inspiration from them and there's aspects of those characters, I've done that before. Sure, why not? That's perfectly fine and fair and interesting. Yeah, that's cool. But when you literally just basically rip off a character and you're just like, wow, dude. Uh, but tangent
Way to be
aside,
creative.
way to be fucking original and creative. Well done there, bud. Had to dig real deep for that. But that tangent aside, he claimed they weren't from other media. However, the whole seven family names the fourth, who also turned out to be a gunslinger haunted by a tragic family event, was obviously totally original. So was the whole sorcerer in brown coat that burned his entire family alive. Jesus, dude, this is just. I don't know, man. I couldn't. I don't know if he and I could be friends, man. I don't think he can kick it, man. I don't think he's invited to the cookout, man. I don't think he's invited to the cookout. Uh, Regardless, we played on, and eventually, and I can't recall how exactly, but he'd been particularly annoying to play with and was obstructing progress more than helping it. And I told the GM, hey, do you want me to talk to him about it? Since I usually was the conflict resolution guy. Sure, good for you, OP. GM said sure, but on one condition. That'll come up later. I messaged Steve, and after some niceties, I explained that we weren't particularly happy with his playing today. Straight to the point, I can respect it. Steve responded apologetically. He was particularly fond of playing with me, saying essentially, you're among the best players I've ever played with. I'll take the ego stroke. Why not? And after that, he asked the question, do you have any feedback for me to do better next session or future sessions? And honestly, it was all pretty typical stuff, and he engaged with it in the moment too. Responded well and seemed appreciative of the feedback, and it became, a pretty pleasant conversation overall. It was late in the evening at that point, so we said our goodnights and we'd chat another time. The following morning, the GM is texting me that Steve messaged him. Steve is claiming that I was verbally abusive towards him and bullying him in conversation, so on and so forth. Now, it's true that the conversation maybe started out a bit blunt and harsh, but I mean, come on. Abusive? The GM screen shared the conversation he'd had with Steve over text, and we both burst out laughing. What Steve didn't know is that the GM requested a screenshot of my end of the feedback conversation the night before, just so we'd have clarity on what was given in the feedback. That was the condition that the GM had given me. Steve, on his part, had edited every Discord message to take a victim tone of, please, not tonight. I'm not doing I'm not doing well. I'm very poor. I'm feeling very poorly mentally right now. The GM asked why all his messages said edited at the end. And Steve alleged he was just making typos because he was so distraught by everything. And at my recommendation, the GM asked Steve to take a screenshot of the edited timestamp. If you didn't know that that was a thing, well, we didn't either. It is, though. And hover over that part and you'll see when it was last edited, not the history. To summarize the end, we confronted Steve with the conversation screenshots that actually happened the night before. And he didn't really have much to say at that point, and as a result, was immediately ejected from both the game and some of the projects too in real life, as it were. This remains genuinely one of the funniest bits of drama I've ever experienced. This was several years ago, and we've spoken and metaphorically shook hands and kind of, buried the hatchet at this point. Never really asked what happened or what was going on, and never really understood the goal behind all of this, honestly. But I'm thankful, but I'm also thankful for that GM approaching me first about it since they know I wouldn't do this and personally take mental health seriously. Don't let edited messages fool you, kids. Stay in school. In post.
I mean,
What do
that
you
was
think about
smart
this?
on them getting him to basically out himself for editing all the messages.
Well, I mean, I think it was smart right away that the GM, stipulated like, hey, if you're gonna do this, probably do it over text so that you have receipts for all the things that was specifically said. Or if you're gonna, if you're gonna do a voice call, like record the call, to make sure that yeah, everything's up. So you have evidence, you have things just like this. Goes to show everybody, right? You brought your receipts, you bring your evidence, you showcase because people, yeah, in today's digital world, hell, it's getting even worse now with the introduction of AI and shit. It's becoming easier and easier to be able to try and augment and what do they call it? Edit things to appear vastly different than they actually are. It is a scary thing. It is, man. It is a terrifying thing for so many to be able to pretty easily just start literally augmenting and changing the truth of things, the perception of something. Like that's humans already have enough problems and difficulty perceiving things accurately as it is, let alone when people are like deliberately, tampering with shit to make it even less clear.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's insane the amount of effort people put into shit like this because it's just all it does is show that you're a conniving weakling.
yeah, to put it nicely, like
Because like, what's the
that's
point? What's the point of talking to someone and being all two-faced? There's no reason. I don't understand people who are like that, and I certainly don't understand it. Them trying to pin shit on someone else and make it worse for them, and this whole like, I don't know. You don't gain anything out of it because even if people don't find out, there's going to be people with hurt feelings aside from the person you're doing this to. And if people do find out, you're just going to get removed from anything you wanted to be doing. What, like, just come clean and like you could just apologize. You could just
or
say, "Hey,
yeah,
hey, we had a talk," and go to the rest of the group and just say, "I'm sorry for my play. I'm sorry for how I was acting. If you give me another chance, maybe we can make this work."
yeah. I'll
And
do my
don't take
best to
it
make it up
so,
to you.
don't take it so personally when someone calls you out for bad play or just acting poorly. Because this isn't just a D&D thing. This is just like, you've had people in your life occasionally where it's like you need to act better.
You need to get
That's
your
all it
shit. To,
is.
you need to, you need to get your shit
It's
together.
not even like you're a bad person or I hate you
No,
now, but it's
no.
like, well, now my priorities when it comes to listening to you and trusting you have changed, and you need to put in work to change that again if you want this to continue.
I mean, hell,
You need
it
to be better yourself if you
yeah,
want me to continue to trust you,
and
because
that's
that's the kind of shit this is. This is untrustworthy behavior.
yeah. To say that's putting it lightly. Like again, to Sam's point, it's literally the opposite, right? It's not about oh I don't like you or I hate you now or whatever. It's literally hey I value this relationship and this connection enough to be like hey man I'm a if we're really friends if we really are close in any capacity I'm gonna tell you like it is. I'm gonna let you know your shit if it is consistently negatively affecting things and you're not really showing any signs of progress or getting healthier or healing. Like I'm gonna let you know like yo bro I'm not I can't keep doing this like this. You know what I mean? I would love to be able to still play. I'd love to be able to still hang and do all this stuff together, whatever. But like the way that you've been choosing to behave and to act, like this ain't copacetic, man. This ain't kosher, bro. Like you need to get your shit together. And hell, not even necessarily for me, but for yourself, even. Like this isn't good for you. This is
Yeah.
something that you need that I would prefer for you, even if we can't do this anymore, at least I want you to be healthy and have the opportunity to grow as a person. Like whereas this, yeah, like this is just some straight manipulative, two-faced bullshit where you're just like, oh yeah, he's seemingly, really receptive and open to criticism. And again, to be fair, right? We talked about this before as well. Criticism always has to be taken by the individual and decided on whether or not it is truly, constructive or just straight up destructive, right? Criticism, if it's destructive or like, unproductive and shit, it's just kind of people just throw like just blah 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 because that happens, right? There are plenty of people where they're just gonna start saying some shit just to say some shit. They're not actually trying to be helpful or constructive or anything like that. They're just saying some shit to just blah. And you got to be able to learn how to kind of sort through that. You got to be able to learn how to tell the difference between truly healthy, constructive, helpful criticism and the destructive, unproductive bullshit criticism. And I would say, I would make the assumption that I don't think that this probably was destructive. Especially if it was, this is certainly not the way to handle it. Because again, if it really was, you would have had the receipts to showcase like this was abusive or messed up. You wouldn't have had to have edited your shit and stuff. Like, because also you can't edit other people's messages. So it's like,
So the conversation just doesn't even make
it's
sense.
still not really like, even if you can edit your own to try and make it seem more like you're like, I'm sorry. I can't keep doing this. I'm too emotionally distraught and I'm too mentally messed up to do anything. And you're just like, okay, well, again, we've talked about this before as well, maybe even in last video. Just because somebody might suffer a bit from, a bit of neurodivergence or mental disability or problems or issues, that also still doesn't entitle them to just being an asshole or being destructive or harmful to people around them as well, right? We talked about this in that there is absolutely a certain amount of grace and empathy and understanding that needs to go into that because yeah, they are dealing with some shit that is, more difficult maybe to be able to actively process and deal with. But the whole point, the reason you give them that grace, that empathy and consideration is because they're actively trying to be better. They're actively trying to grow to the point where it is no longer destructive or harmful or disruptive or screwed up for people around them, where they're being like, I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to master myself in this part of myself in my mind that is difficult. Like, that is the reason to give them that. But if they're not doing that, if they're just going to always try to use their so-called, mental disability or neurodivergence or whatever as a crutch and an excuse to justify their shitty behavior, that's something else. And at that point, there is no justification for that. Because you're not actually being considerate of anybody else around you anyway, so why should anybody else be considerate of you, regardless of your circumstances? You should be especially considerate of other people because of your circumstances. Because you're like, yeah, I'm going through some shit, so I know what it's like to go through some shit, so maybe I shouldn't be so quick to judge other people. Because I know what it's like to be judged. I know what it's like to be there and have that and, to have some real shit. But, unfortunately, a lot of people aren't, they ain't real like that. They ain't capable of that type of shit. They'd rather just take the easy way out
Yeah.
and use it as an excuse, which is really, really unfortunate. But you know what? This particular post was not unfortunate. This particular post, again, this is more of a glory story than a horror story, in my opinion. They nipped that shit in the bud like that. This is a textbook prime example of how you handle situations like this, ladies and gentlemen. This was very well done, in my opinion. We love to see it. We love to see this person, all these toxic assholes, not ruin groups because they were ready for each other. They trusted each other. And even better than that, they fucking brought their facts and receipts when they needed it. Well done, y'all. Let's move on to the next one of the day. Go ahead and take it away, Sam.
Of our next story by Gurs.
Gruz.
When when the dice defang the horror or an anti-horror story? Question mark. This is under the lighthearted tag, so it should be fun. I don't know if it fits here. This is nothing serious, just a game not going according to plan because the game designers absolutely didn't account for the randomness of dice.
Or maybe they did.
One
This
thing,
could be
yeah,
intentional.
one thing to know about me. Per my flair, I generally roll like shit. Hey, we know one of those.
This is one of the reasons I also chose. I felt a particular kinship with this person. As soon as they said that, I'm like, your story must be heard. It must be told and heard.
Even better than I'm the one saying it. But once per session, I will roll extremely well in a clutch situation. My Pathfinder character dealt the final blow to about 80% of the bosses we've faced so far, most of them with crits. For example, or for crits with example, and this time was no different. We were trying out Mothership with another player, and of course the GM. The game is supposed to be a sci-fi horror game in the vein of Alien and Dead Space. Combat is supposed to be extremely deadly, characters die easily, monsters are hard to kill if you don't know their exact weakness, etc. To quote from the manual, you should expect violence to be punishing. If you're fighting, you're losing. Violence is deadly and should be avoided at all costs.
That is,
That's like
that's
Call of
it.
Cthulhu.
Yeah, no, it's very much so. This is not a heroic type of game here.
Ooh.
This is
Since
highly
we
deadly.
since we were only two players, the game is balanced around four. We each got two characters.
Ooh,
I like that. The other player got the
yeah.
Marine, big fighty guy, and the Android support. I got the scientist, also mostly support, and the Teamster, basically blue collar worker, jack of all trades. Wonderful.
We love a
the
teamster,
I don't
don't
know if you actually
we?
met a Teamster. They're not really a jack of all trades.
Not particularly.
They're just a guy that drinks Monster Energy and eats roller hot
I was gonna
dogs.
say, I think they often want you to believe that they're much more capable than I think they
No,
actually
they're
are. But
capable. They'll get it done. It's just not gonna be the code. The
exactly. So
characters.
not.
No, it'll work. No, Adam, you misunderstand. I'm not
Mm,
insulting them. This is just
okay.
a Teamster under the age of like 30. So in our age range,
Uh-huh.
they are drinking white Monster Energies and eating roller
Yeah.
hot dogs on a regular basis. And that
Yeah.
is just because that's what they do.
Yep.
And that's okay. They're gonna be taught by an old man, 30 years their
So I was gonna
senior who
say,
can't hear anymore.
yep, someday so they're gonna have a nice, lovely sensei mentor
Yeah, yeah,
to whip them
yeah.
into shape.
Yep, that's how it works. The characters were pre-generated by the GM with their equipment rolled on the general starting equipment table, and their stats were also rolled per the game's rules. The thing about the equipment table, though, it's not balanced at all. Some rolls will have you starting with armor and good weapons. Some will have you start in a bathrobe with a towel. Okay, not exactly that, but that's the level of usefulness of some kits. My kit was really good, and this will be relevant later. We were playing a scenario from the starter box. The mission. Command lost contact with a planetary science base. Restore comms, rendezvous with the military leader, and the head scientist, recover data. The usual setup,
Rendezvous.
yeah. The usual setup after scouting the base. Everybody's dead. Dave. Oh, everybody's dead, Dave. Claw marks, ruins of an interrupted birthday party, etc. We ended up next to the inner doors of the garage where we'd heard some weird noises. We entered the garage and saw a guy digging into the ground. And out of character, of course we knew it was going to happen. We didn't want a metagame. So the Marine went to subdue the dude, which was when chitinous tentacles burst out of his form and attacked us. The first combat encounter of the game. On
There
our
we
first
go.
turn, the Marine tried to attack the creature, missed. My scientist ran over to the fuel drums, planning to empty them into the hole where the creature was. And my teamster ran in to flank the monster and attack it with her melee weapon. Missed. The android tried something similar, also missed, and then on its first proper turn, the monster climbed out of the hole, so much for my scientist's plan, attacked the Marine, and hit him for 23 damage. In this game, creatures and players have at most 20 hit points. If you go below 0, you gain a wound. You should add 1 to your wounds counter. If you reach your max wounds, you need to roll a death save, which will likely take your character out of the game, if not just straight up kill them. And then roll on the wound table to see what it does to you. Low rolls are inconsequential or only have minor and temporary consequences. High rolls can be lethal. Then you reset your HP to 20 and carry over excess damage. The other players rolled really lucky on their wounds table, 1, and only got an awesome scar out of it. But he was also grappled by the creature. We now knew that this monster wasn't fucking around, and we should think about retreating. On my turn, I positioned the scientist to hit the creature with his flamethrower once he gets a clean shot, and I sent in my teamster to slice off the tentacle to help the Marine break free. And this is where the anti-horror begins. First, I roll to attack. In this game, that's just rolling a D100 and seeing if it's under your combat stat, with any modifiers if you can think of them. But in this case, none were applicable. After a string of failures on various rolls, I finally succeed on hitting the creature. My starting kit had a vibro machete, a machine
Jesus.
weapon with really high damage, 3d10, which I used to attack and roll the damage, 21. Now,
Wow.
yeah, another part of the game's rules, every creature has armor points, AP. And if the damage you deal is under the AP, it's ignored. If it's equal or above, the creature's armor is destroyed and it takes all the damage. Oh, I'm so sorry. So if your AP is 5 and you take 4 damage, you can shrug it off. But if you take 6 damage, then your armor is destroyed and you take the 6 damage. Interesting. The GM started saying that only if I rolled a bit higher, I could have damaged the monster. But alas, apparently his monster has an AP well north of 20.
Damn.
Then I asked, hey GM, some weapons have AA next to them. What does that mean? GM, it means it ignores armor. Well, I'm just asking because the Viper Machete has this property. Fuck. What that meant was no matter its armor, the creature had to take all that damage directly to its HP, and its armor was destroyed. Subsequent attacks would treat its AP as 0. If that is, if there had been subsequent attacks. But I'm getting ahead of myself. GM, okay, that takes the creature below 0. I had a wound. Now I roll a d10 to see what kind of wound the creature takes. The weapon's description says it deals 2 kinds of wounds, bleeding and gore. So first I'll roll for the bleeding. 9. Remember that part about the wounds from above? In this game, the severity of a d10 roll goes from 0 to 9. So 9 is fatal.
Automatic death save.
Automatic death save. And the only way this could have been worse for the monster is if I'd rolled a 9 on the gore wound. That one just says, head explodes, no death saves, you've died. That's a death save. And that's a 6. Let me see what it does. Fuck. On the death save table, 5 to 9 is instant death.
You see why I chose this one?
This monster was supposed to be a big bad xenomorph in the first section of the game, terrorizing us around the base, and I accidentally killed it in one lucky hit. So instead of hiding from this crab bug zombie alien thing, we got to leisurely stroll around the admittedly creepy gore splattered, corpse littered base, trying to figure out where the crew members who are still unaccounted for went. The other base in this adventure is supposed to be much more difficult, so we'll see if my teamster's luck keeps her alive. But really, the GM should have seen this coming when he named the character Ripley.
I mean, basically gave her the luck of the gods with that one.
That's literally, I mean, that's how most games like this function. Call of Cthulhu is very similar. You're either gonna get your shit kicked in. There's three outcomes to every encounter.
Yep.
Half or more of your party dies.
I was gonna say, yeah.
You lose one person or have a couple really bad injuries. You don't win, but you get away. Or you accidentally murder something.
Yep.
Like it's there's no in between. Like when I played
It's
Call of
always one
Cthulhu,
extreme or the other for the most part.
I played Call of Cthulhu for one session. I died 3 times
Yep.
in the one session.
Yep.
My DM just had me start playing NPCs that were coming into the scene. My first character dies. Okay, well, someone called the cops because of all the noise. So I played the cop that came in. And he died.
Yep.
So I played his backup. And he died anyway. And great time. Especially for someone like me who dies more than anyone else at my table. It was very fun.
This is just beautiful. I love this because it really is just like this is what we live for moments in tabletop RPGs. Like this shit right here, where you're like, you are in an absolute like body blender scenario situation, and you just roll the most ridiculous clutch moments that are there with the dice, and the dice gods smile upon you, and they're like, yes, it's time. And you just decimate whatever threat is like in front of you, or you're able to like get that super clutch skill check success in, like whatever it is. This shit is freaking hilarious. And I also love it too because again, as long as it wasn't like, you know, the mega final enemy, whatever, it is very akin to, you know, yeah, like Alien / Dead Space, where you were able to take out one of the monsters here. That's amazing. And then obviously the next part of it is like you still should probably be really freaking careful because it's, again, it's not impossible. And I don't think it really was anti-horror in my opinion. Like I absolutely 100% believe that the designers absolutely accounted for the randomness of the dice. That is purposeful. You're
Yeah.
100% supposed to be able to do this shit if you have the right tools for the job, for one, very dependent, and if you just roll really well, which again, for some of us, is a statistic anomaly of unlikeliness or likeliness, depending on if you're really good. Again, if there are people like me, then there are also the antithesis where you just have the craziest supreme dice rollers who ever walked the planet. It just doesn't make any sense. But either way, these moments are some of the best because they're just so memorable and amazing. Like, it's great. That being the case, we got one final little one at the end here. Just a small little story to leave us off here. Again, lighthearted, more so kind of just a an attempt at helping this OP here who seems a little bit frustrated. This story is titled "No Plan Ever Works." Is this normal? By Buon Dwaf. Buon Dwarf, I think maybe it's supposed to be.
No,
Buon Dwarf.
Blound Dwarf.
Buon Dwarf, yeah, by Buon Dwarf. This is my first D&D table, so I'm not familiar with how these things usually work out, but I've been playing a table for a few sessions now. It's been really frustrating me to no end how nothing ever works. In today's session, for instance, we had a mission to sneak into an ancient dwarven city that was currently overrun by orcs, which is a cool setup, all things considered. Me and the other players spent 2 actual hours talking to an NPC that used to live in said city, trying to come up with a plan. Ventilation tubes or tunnels to the city? Nope, they don't ventilate their city. What? Chimneys so the smoke could escape? Nope, the cave is really tall, so the smoke just kind of flies up and stays there. No need for a chimney.
That's not how smoke works.
That's not smoke. Usually, after a while can start dropping because it gets heavier. Like it also like a side entrance? Nope. A river that could connect to the surface? Nope. They have a small cave lake that doesn't connect to anywhere. It's also not how they would run out of water eventually then. That doesn't disguise as a half orc? Half orcs don't exist. Disguised as a full orc. They can tell you apart by the smell. How? If everything smells, how could they tell? Like, okay. Those are just some examples. Every question the players came up with, all reasonable things for a city to have that we could exploit to sneak into. Nope, nope, and a double nope. Nothing. We spent 2 hours in real life listing things, and at the end, the answer was always the same. Run through the only gate and fight everything on the way. And this is just one example. Every plan we tried to come up with so far was met with a resounding no. The most egregious example that I can recall is when we were staying at a tavern and had to save money, and the thought to save money was of having one single bed for a room per 2 people. Yeah, sorry, that sentence was a little weird for me. And the GM just ominously said, "Are you sure? There will be consequences." Now, I don't know. Am I just being entitled here? Because I just feel exceedingly frustrated that we spend so much time and energy trying to think of alternative ways to do things, and each of those always end up just going with the initial plan an NPC gives us in post. So again, right off the bat, OP, Brown Dwarf, no. No, you are not entitled. No, no, no. This right here is absolutely ridiculously, redonkulously stupid. Like your GM clearly has, if anything, absolutely zero ability to like adapt and create alternative ideas. This is maybe one of the hardest, most egregious examples of railroading that I've ever bore witness to. But at least from a second person's perspective. What about you, Sam? What do you think?
No, this is just someone who can't adapt, like at all. A DM that I would not want to play at their table because it would piss me off to no end. Because again, I don't think any of the things that were asked are unreasonable, uh, unrealistic standards for what a adaptive, or role playing game is.
I mean,
and
not even
all
just
of it,
that.
it just seems like combative for no reason.
Or I mean, oh, maybe not even combative, but also just straight. It just shuts everything down. Especially there isn't actually even any logic to it, as we just said. They are a city, assuming if it's a dwarven city, an ancient dwarven city, it's most likely built underground, or in a mountain. That's usually what dwarves do. Uh, Dwarves literally do ventilate their cities. They like counter to maybe what some might make assume. Dwarves do need air to survive. Actually, you know what's not in abundance underground?
Air.
Air for the most part. So you better fucking believe. Yes, they ventilate their cities, not just for that reason, but also because often dwarves are very well known for what was that again, acolytes? Yes, correct, little Tim Tim. Forging and blacksmithing, of which they also need an excess of air and oxygen to do that for the forges. They also need to be able to blow out, yes, toxic fumes like smoke. That will, sure, yeah, smoke rises, and you can, if you stay low enough to the ground, you can sometimes keep yourself from, getting in with smoke, but that doesn't last forever. You know what I mean? Like eventually it will fill up with smoke, no matter how low to the ground you are. Like you can't like ventilation itself just makes the most sense. Yes.
I mean, like,
They also need water. Water is
yeah,
another thing that they need. You can't have a lake underground that leads to nowhere because the lake would have dried up eons ago by this
yeah. There
point.
has to be some way that the lake fills, whether that's runoff from precipitation on the surface that comes through the rocks, whether there's an aquifer or some sort of underground reservoir of
Yeah,
water,
river. Yeah, some kind of river that
something.
leads out. Like you have to have something. It's not possible for them to just not have just have an isolated body of water.
Well,
Also,
I
that
mean,
body of water probably wouldn't be safe to drink either if it didn't have some kind of amount of,
well, it's you wouldn't want to drink it right from it anyway, but
you know,
you'd need what they're referring to as a pond, and ponds are usually only filled with precipitation because ponds are a
mhm.
form of water retention that
Yes.
just happen
Not they're
naturally.
not yeah, they are not specifically connected to a larger like body of water and they are not infinite unless of course you have, unless of course the area is very common for rainfall is one of the biggest things. That's obviously ponds are normally mostly, if they're outdoor, of course, if they're open air, they're usually refilled with rainfall. Like to Sam's point though, if they're in a cave, precipitation from the moisture of like the rocks and the air, I mean, eventually, condenses enough for it to start dropping and dripping down to the ground to become liquid at that point. But if you have a literal civilization living in an area that is actually taking from said pond, if it's getting precipitation only from the rocks, that is not sustainable. It will very quickly still dry out because that whole process takes a lot and it is not particularly abundant. And so therefore it doesn't make any sense. There's everything about this is completely and utterly ridiculous. And it's clear as day that the GM just wanted them to go along with what he planned, with what he wanted. He just wanted a full frontal assault instead of anything actually interesting or different. Like this is just textbook example of just bad DMing. It's just bad DMing. Uh, OP, if you ever see this video, if you ever see this little nitbit here, no, you are not the asshole. No, you're not being entitled. No, this is not normal. At least maybe I shouldn't say it's not normal. There are plenty of instances and things, but it's not a thing that is good. It is not a good normal thing. It is absolutely something that you should talk to the GM about. Some of the comments down below even say very similar things that we have. Literally, top comment says it best. That's a GM that cannot adapt. Talk to them. Let them know that you want to have a more collaborative game, that you don't feel like your ideas are being given fair consideration. If they don't listen/improve, let them know it's not the game for you and leave. It doesn't sound like they'll change, but it's still nice to give them a chance. Couldn't have said it better ourselves. Wrong Context 173, which is a funny name. It is what it is. Another commenter also says, I think a lot of GMs are afraid of improv because they think it can derail their campaign instead of seeing it as the amazingly versatile tool that it is. Another one actually says, too, if that's the case, why bother playing with other people? That GM should just write a novel or play solo instead. That's a fair point. The other commenter responds again, says, honestly, I bet he doesn't even know that there are solo ways to play. I also have to guess he doesn't want to play with his friends, but he had a specific method in mind for how he would get in, and when they didn't do that, he turned into a brick wall. I don't know how much experience this guy has, so I cannot tell if he should indeed just stop and write the book, or if it's just that early gut feeling that you don't know what you're doing. If you are a GM, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. No, that is a fair critique as well, and plenty of people have felt that kind of fear or that anxiety of like shit. Like if your players go off and kind of do something you weren't necessarily expecting or planning, you're like, fuck, what do I do? Like, you don't feel confident enough to necessarily be able to provide as fun or interesting an experience as you could have if they had technically followed your pre-planned idea. But again, like it was already previously said, being able to improvise and adapt on the fly to certain decisions that your players make is indeed some of the funnest ways to play this hobby in this game. Like there's almost nothing quite like it when you do so. Um, it's just unfortunate that a lot of people don't try to take improv as more of a, like the person said, as more of the versatile tool that it can be, as taking the opportunity for new things. Too many people are just too scared and wrapped up in their own shit.
And to be fair, it is scary. It's just
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be. And like if you're
Why does it need to be the
at
bad
all
kind,
if you're all at all experienced, it shouldn't stay that way either, which is the hard bit.
I mean, even if you aren't experienced, right? Like you gotta learn somehow, right? You can't be afraid of failure is the biggest thing. If you're a GM especially, you can't be afraid to fail. And you have to be willing to try a lot of things if you want to succeed. I mean, hell, again, that's true for anything in life, but it's definitely true for being a GM where you're like, yo, you're probably gonna fail a lot in a number of ways, and that's okay. That's not that, you should be prepared for that. The goal of the GM is not to never ever fail at anything. It's to just, do your best to make the game fun for everybody, as many people as you can. That's it. The only way you fail is, well, by doing this, by literally only trying to make the game fun for you. That is a failure of a GM in my eyes.
Yeah.
But,
Unfortunately, you're not wrong on that one.
it might be a bit harsh, but that's the way it is. Because a GM's literal job is they are the games master. They're meant to make the game as fun and enjoyable and entertaining for everybody, including themselves, at the table. And if they do not, if they are not trying to do that, if they're not attempting to, again, you won't always be able to, right? It's not that perfect. You're not always going to be able to accomplish that perfectly. That doesn't make you a failure at all. The only time it does make you a failure is when you never try, is when you stop trying to do that. And you're only really focusing on yourself or one other person, which is usually still just for yourself in some way. So that, in my eyes, is the only real true failure as a GM. But with that, anything else you got on this one, Sammy?
No, that's all.
All right,
I think
well,
I think you spoke quite well
I
of
appreciate
it.
that,
So,
buddy. Well, feel free to take us out today, bud.
all right. Well, it's been a bit since I've taken us out either, but uh, thank you all for joining us today in a reading of these wonderfully terrible stories. Not really terrible. Today was a
I
little
mean, yeah,
better.
we actually had some decent ones this time. Again, some of them that I would say were maybe even glory stories rather than horror stories. So,
But yeah, as always, we appreciate uh, anyone who's watching, anyone who wants to leave any opinions, or even just saying hi down in the comments. So please do, and hopefully you'll join us next time, whether it's more Cautionary Chronicles, whether it's deep dives into lore or game mechanics for the new 2024 fifth edition stuff, because we still have a lot of that to get through.
yeah, 5.5. Yeah, we
Yeah,
got we got more
5.5.
we got more of that coming.
But thank you very much, and as always, It's fun to do this with you, Adam. So hopefully you had a good time as well.
It's always a pleasure, Sammy. Again, that's why we do this. Again, for just for the sheer enjoyment of it, honestly. That's why we love it. But as always, yeah, thank y'all. We'll be sure to catch you guys when we dive back down into the archive. Nighty night,
Yeah.
y'all.